Hey everyone, Tristan of the future here. Just a little disclaimer: we had a lot of issues with Facebook Messenger calling during this episode, and unfortunately, whole parts of the conversation had to be cut out because the call got dropped, or like one person would get dropped, and so the rest of us wouldn't hear. And so, even though we were all still recording our audio on our ends, we couldn't hear the conversation, and so the conversation didn't flow. Now that that has been said, enjoy the episode. Welcome to episode 7 of Plugged In. Today we have a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, very special guest?
Yeah, hello guys. My name is Jack Wittich, and I play in a band called The Buried Heart.
Welcome to Plugged In.
Thanks for
Our
having me.
first our first question, of course, you've heard our podcast. I'm sure you know how this
Mhm.
goes. Is just give us a background on the Buried Heart.
Okay, so I write all of the songs for The Buried Heart. It's kind of just like a solo project for me, and then I have friends in different bands come and help me out live. So I originally started the project back in 2013, and originally it was really like metalcore and heavy, and then as time has gone on and I've gone to like different local shows and kind of figured out what it is I really wanted to do with my music, it's kind of taken on a more, I guess, less heavy, kind of more melodic, post-hardcore, pop punk, I guess, whatever you want to call it. um, so yeah, so that started in 2013, 2017 now. Getting ready to release the debut EP called Safe Harbor, which will be out on Friday, July 21st. So, getting really excited to finally get that out there after I've been writing and playing shows for almost 4 years now.
That's awesome.
Excellent, excellent.
So, first of all, I just wanted to say that as someone who's like followed your music for a little bit, and you've sent me some stuff like previous CP,
Mhm.
like some stuff demos you were working on and ideas you had. It's been really cool just to watch your sort of musical ideas grow and just your vocal ability and just general musical ability grow. Because honestly, I really see a progression from the stuff you've sent me like from last year and like even just to now. It's been pretty impressive to me at least.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, last year we released a little four-song demo that was on Bandcamp that is no longer on there. So if you have it downloaded, you have the rarities now. But yeah, last year those demos were recorded in like the end of 2015 is like when we started recording them. It was actually a school project for my friend Rudy, who is an audio engineering student at Chico State, which is I lived in Chico, and that's where I started the Buried Heart. So his project was that he had to record like a local band, and for the project it's only one song, but he booked a bunch of extra recording time, and we just knocked out a little four-song demo in that time period, recording from like 2 o'clock in the morning to 6 a.m. All of like the really janky night recording sessions, but it was a lot of fun. So that was when I was still kind of like figuring out the sound and like working on before I was doing a lot of shows with the Buried Heart, and then after that, when we had like a physical release, I was able to send that to new bandmates and have them get on board and start learning the songs, and then started doing shows, and then just from playing shows and going to more local shows and getting inspired by people my age who are starting to play shows and tour now, it's like really pushed me to stay on top of my game, especially too because if you want to be like a touring punk band, I guess there is kind of like a certain age where you can get away with doing that, and I'm already like 23, so I'm trying to get this off the ground while I still can. Um, But anyway, yeah. Part of the big musical growth though was that last year, as I was writing the songs for this EP, I took vocal lessons from Andrew Wells of Idola, who has also been on this show, which everybody should go listen to those episodes if they haven't already. But yeah, Andrew was a great vocal teacher. I mean, I'm a big Idola fan. We were kind of friends before I started taking lessons from him, but he was really good at helping me zone in on exactly what I wanted to improve with my voice. It wasn't just like he had his own curriculum and gave it to me. He really kind of like built the curriculum about what I wanted to do with my voice. And then between that and doing like routine practices with this dude Frank, who I live with. He also plays in the Buried Heart, and he plays in a really dope instrumental band called Surrounded by Giants. We just, yeah, we being around musicians who are also inspired to improve themselves really helped me stay on track, I guess, because I get distracted with stuff super easily. So yeah, just Andrew really helped me focus in on my voice. Working with Alan too, Alan Casillas, who drums for a band called Ivies and has also been touring with Hail the Sun. He also produced the newest Andres album and actually the last Terra Alive EP too, Road from West Egg. He had production duties on that as well. But he really helped me focus in on my voice too. A lot of parts that I had originally written as screaming parts, Alan helped me rewrite as just clean vocal parts and really helped me push my voice in my upper range instead of just resorting to screaming because I didn't think I could hit notes. So I feel like I owe a lot of this EP to a lot of the locals around me and then my idols who have also helped me zone in on my sound as well.
When you were recording with Alan, did you come down here to meet up with him, or were you up? Like, did he? Was he in a studio up there, or?
Yeah, I came down to LA to record because Chico is in Northern California. I actually met Alan. Vies played in Chico at like a really tiny bar. It was like 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember thinking, "Whoa, this band is really cool," but I didn't really like talk or hang out with them after that. And then Hail the Sun came through Chico, and the house that I was living in at the time was like right down the street from the venue that they played at. So they all came over afterwards and partied after the show. And then I got to talk to Alan a lot, and he was telling me about Andres. And my roommate Frank was really into Andres as well. And hearing how Alan was talking about producing, I really liked his mentality and his work ethic. So I really wanted to work with him for the EP. So yeah, I came down in January. We tracked the whole thing at his little studio in his garage in about 10 days. Um, recorded all like the raw tracks and everything, and then he went to a different studio to reamp the guitars, and then he performed the drums live on the album because I had just brought him like MIDI files that he had kind of like tweaked and rewrote the drums for because I'm not a drummer, so a lot of the times I'll just use like the auto drumming program in Logic to come up with a beat for my songs. So working with him as a producer and also as a drummer was a really awesome experience.
I think it's kind of interesting that the project is like mostly written by yourself, but yet there's still that sort of collaborative aspect to it. So, one question I have is like, when did you decide that you wanted to mostly make the Buried Heart? Like, basically, when did you decide to focus on primarily solo recordings as opposed to like a band driven like project? Were you in a band before? If so, like, what made you decide to focus on being a solo artist primarily?
I was in a band in high school called As My Witness. I don't think any of those recordings exist online, hopefully just on my hard drive. But that working like that with a band was cool. Even for that band though, I was primarily writing all of the material. I think I got into writing most of the material because I didn't want to wait to find bandmates to write and record parts. I really just wanted to record whatever was in my head and just get it out as quickly as possible. I'm trying to right now though solidify a lineup for the Buried Heart. I think the next release is going to be a bit more collaborative. Um, right now, Frank, that guitar player, and my roommate who I was telling you about is on board. I've got a drummer in Sacramento, which is what we're about to move to, and I want to get him on board. So hopefully, this next year in the Buried Heart will be focused on getting a solid lineup and making it more collaborative because I'm realizing that, um, a song that I come up with in my head could be much better with other people's input. I just don't have their input right now, so I can't hear it. So I'm really open to the idea of writing with other people and making it a more collaborative experience.
Just as a side note, I wanted to say, it's funny how you mention how you like to write the music because you don't like waiting on other people to bring in their stuff. I have that same issue with doing music, except I'm not good at playing guitar, so I want to write. I want to write the parts that I come up with in my head, but then I'm like, oh wait, I can't really play this. Like,
Yeah.
never mind.
Honestly,
I guess I'm just gonna sit on it.
honestly though, you could I don't know, a big factor for me which helped me with starting to write drum parts is just messing around with MIDI instruments and different DAWs and recording what I had and maybe quantizing it to the grid so it was on time and then teaching myself the riffs later. I know some other musicians do that as well. But yeah, I mean, I'll write the skeleton for a song, and my drum parts are usually pretty basic because I'm not a great drummer. And what I'll do is whoever I'm playing with live for a show, because I've kind of had a revolving door, rotating lineup for the last couple years. But I'll send them the basic song skeleton demo that I make, and then just pretty much present it this is my base idea. You guys, since you're better at these other instruments than I am, you can take the idea that I'm doing, work it into your own kind of style, maybe make it your own, and then usually that makes our live performances a little more unique each time, depending on the lineup. I like the idea of having the live show not be an exact replication of the album. The albums, I like tracking everything because it's okay, this is how I see the songs, and then playing them live with different musicians, it's kind of this is how everyone is interpreting this song, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it, because there's obviously been some solo artists some are very controlling with the sound of live performances and just collaborating in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the approach you're taking is pretty interesting, where you sort of give the other people in that process the leeway to sort of figure out their own role in it and not just direct every single aspect of it yourself.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I definitely do have tendencies to sometimes be controlling. If there's a drum fill that's way too busy, I'll be sure to point out maybe we could tone this down a little bit. I have a guiding idea of how I want the song to sound, but nothing concretely set in stone. And I'm open to different people's takes on certain parts. But I guess I would say ultimately I make the executive decision.
Right, right. So,
Yeah.
I guess shifting focus a little bit, would you say for this Safe Harbor EP, there's 5 tracks, would you say there's an overarching lyrical theme or just conceptual theme that ties all the songs together, or?
Yeah, there are some themes that went through it. It's pretty much a documentation of the last 2 years of my life. I know that kind of sounds cliche for most artists, but the first song on the album, Veins, is actually, the lyrics for that song are kind of a poetic interpretation of a phone call that I had with my dad about me wanting to drop out of college to focus on music and trying to show him that I have the drive and desire to make moves and make it happen. And that, I would say, that first guitar line that comes in at the beginning of the song, I don't know if you guys noticed, but it shows up at the very end of the last song, Flowers and Theft. And I kind of use that melody as a theme of self doubt or reassurance at the same time. It's my feelings of being unsure of the future, but the desire to try to mold it into what I want. So with Veins, that theme is more used. The self doubt is used to explain to my dad I know that dropping out of college might seem not the smartest idea or a really risky idea. Whereas where it shows up in Flowers and Theft, which is a song about um, ending a relationship in order for you to grow as an individual, having that melody show up at the end was used more for like reassurance that ending the relationship was like a necessary thing, even though I had doubts if it was the right thing to do, but knowing deep down that it was what I needed to do in order to progress as an individual.
And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it because like not to get too want to be like psychologist or whatever, but doubt, like you said, like doubt can sort of come in a lot of different forms, and I think like sort of exploring the fact that like self doubt can even be an important thing because second guessing yourself is important. It's not always good to just follow your gut instinct, but
right.
Sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's kind of an interesting theme to sort of explore in music, honestly.
Yeah, I think it also ties into another theme of the album, I would say, is dichotomies, which, as you can tell from one of the song names, that self-doubt versus, believing in yourself is one theme of the dichotomy. The other one, with the song itself, again, ties into, being stagnant in safety, realizing that, I could keep going to college and maybe take a safer route in life, or I could chase something that I've been fantasizing about for, almost my entire adult life and pursuing that. So, yeah, I guess dichotomy is always like doing what I want versus what making everyone around me happy, I guess, is another big theme of the album.
Definitely. Like, for example, when I'm like trying to pursue writing, even though I'm in college right now, my parents I'm not saying they're not happy with my choice in career. They'd probably be happier if I was doing something else.
Yeah.
But it's just obviously like I have doubt about it because like this isn't a career where I can have like for sure a guaranteed job. It's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people that want to do like journalism or writing about different subjects, and it's just like a very competitive field. And it's like I have doubt about it pretty often, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, would I be happier doing something else? Not really. And I think this is what I was meant to try to do. And if it doesn't work out, I can try something else later. But like that doubt is important to some extent. But I think also recognizing like if you have that drive, that's a sign that you should go for it.
Exactly. I also want to clarify too that my parents weren't like against me doing music, and they are very supportive of my music. It just they're doing the normal parent thing. They want to make sure that their child has a safe trajectory in life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But in terms of what you were saying with the writing too. But you guys are all doing good too. I mean, you're like making the moves. You're not just like sitting there and like doubting yourself the whole time. Like you guys are making big strides, and then even like with your writing, Alex, like I've seen you go from Teal Cheese and now New Fury. Like you've been very active in pursuing your dreams as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've gotten some of the opportunities that we've gotten, we wouldn't have gotten without your writing specifically, Alex. I mean, like you're not just sitting here, like waiting for your miracle to strike. Like you're actually putting in the work.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I try. And anyway, we don't need.
All right, let's go back to let's go back to Jack. Let's stop praising Alex. Okay,
I appreciate this, though. We can keep going if you want.
No, I mean it's all like I said, like I get very inspired by people who are putting in the work, not just musicians. So like even seeing you guys like making strides with your career, it's all very motivating to see people my age making strides with their desired careers.
All right,
Trystan,
so let's talk about Garden, the first song that you released off of the EP.
All right. You just want like a little track explanation, or
yeah, like explain it. Tell us why you decided to go with that one as the first song that you publicly released.
Okay, that's actually funny. All right, so I guess I'll explain the song first. So, Garden is about that was actually in terms of all of the songs that are on the EP. That was the first one that I wrote, and I wrote it. It's about my younger brother passing away. He actually passed away in 2013, and I actually formed the Buried Heart shortly after that, almost as like a coping mechanism. But Garden, yeah, it's about the first time I went back to my parents' house after my younger brother had passed away. Talking about turning the handle and going down the stairs. That's referencing uh, going down to the basement where my brother and I used to play Call of Duty and other video games growing up. Um, the wind chime noise I wanted to make sure to incorporate into the song because there was kind of like a serene moment when I was home during that visit where it was like pouring rain outside and I was outside on like my parents' porch and I heard a wind chime and I looked and I had seen that somebody, I don't know who exactly gave it to us, but there was like a memorial wind chime that had my brother's name and dates on it. So I was really inspired by that noise, like hearing it compared to like the thunderstorm that was going on. That was almost like how I was feeling internally. So I wanted to kind of replicate that in the song itself. Um, in terms of like the aggression and the sound of that song, I was actually gonna release Opia as the first single just because I thought it was like kind of summery and poppy. I thought it was like a good one, but I was talking to Alan about it a lot, and even though like we thought that it would obviously be the easy choice for the single, we both determined that it wasn't really representative of all of the other songs on the album. So I feel like Garden is like a good indicator of kind of like the vibe of what to expect from the rest of the songs on the EP. Even though I'd say it's probably the most aggressive one on the album, that or Dichotomy.
Right.
But Dichotomy, I didn't think would be a good single because it kind of, not that it sounds a lot like every other punk, like pop punk summer song, but like I felt like Garden was more of like a unique representation of the kind of stuff that I write as a good like first impression, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a like you said, it's a very aggressive song, and yet like you said, some of the elements are still very like very melodic, and I think it's a really good representation of the EP, like you said.
Yeah, I'm really stoked with how my screams in particular sound on that song, especially the end. Like Burt McCracken from The Used is like one of my biggest vocal influences, and I feel like the end I finally like got that grit and just like craziness that his screams used to have. So I'm really proud of that song. That one means the most to me on the album, definitely.
So one thing I was also wanted to mention for this EP is this may actually sound like it's a criticism, but I promise it isn't, and I'll explain why.
Oh yeah, no worries.
So, so what I really liked is there's 5 songs in this EP, as we said, and you have sort of the first two tracks, and then you have the last two that I'd say all like feel like they're pretty like naturally go together, and then smack dab in the middle you have track 3, Opia, which it feels somewhat separate, and yet it still fits in really well with the rest of the EP. I think, like you said, it has a very summery vibe. It has sort of a very like more poppy atmosphere to it, and yet somehow when taken as a whole, I think it actually fits in really nicely as sort of like a midway point for this EP.
Yeah.
So can you explain the like process of when did you write this song as compared to like the other songs? Was it like originally going to be a separate thing? When did you decide to include it in the EP?
Okay, this is actually a pretty cool story. So, Opia originally, when I took it to Alan, was a completely like different song. Like the only thing that was the same was like the chord progression, pretty much. Even still, like the only thing that we used from the original version was the chorus chord progression. Like we made it pretty much a 4 chord, not even 4 chords. It's 3 chords. Yeah, a 3 chord pop song pretty much. When originally it was a lot more punk and kind of meandering. When I took it to Alan, he really liked the hook immediately, but he thought that the vibe of it was like using what I was saying in the chorus, like the unconditional love that you give to me. He wanted to focus on that lyric and make it the focus of the song, I guess. So we rewrote that song, completely changed the vibe. And while he was listening to it and deciding what we should do with it, he was just like, "Yo, I'm gonna call up Andres. We're gonna get him on this song." And I was freaking out because I'd been listening to Andres a lot, and I'm a big fan of his music. And yeah, so Andres came in one day, and we all kind of sat around and we rewrote a lot of the lyrics, changed up some of the melodies, and yeah, I think I really like how it came out because that song, like the way it is now, is not something that I would have come up with originally, like at all. But I really love how it came out. So that was kind of like what introduced me to the idea of being more collaborative with my music and wanting to, work with other artists more because that song I think is really it's really catchy, and I think Andres and Alan had a big part of making it that. I have kind of a hard time writing naturally catchy stuff because when I write music, I originally I don't focus on my voice. Like I never liked the sound of my voice up until like I started taking lessons with Andrew, so I would write songs that would like have the guitars be the focus, and Alan really wanted to shift that paradigm and make that song about the vocals more than anything. So that was like a really interesting and like different writing process for me. And at first I was almost not liking it because I felt like it almost felt like I was stealing from other artists. Like I've written so much by myself that like using, suggestions from other people almost feels like I'm cheating in a way. But I realized that this is kind of common when you work with a producer, especially one who does like pop and hip hop like Alan. Like a lot of stuff gets rewritten. So it was a really cool experience, and like the more I listen to that song, the more I love it, and I'm really proud of it. And I wanted to put it, like you were saying, it's kind of like it breaks up the rest of the album. I wanted to put it in the middle because I felt like putting it at the beginning would kind of give the wrong vibe of like what the rest of the album would sound like, or like putting it at the end would make it feel like it was just kind of tacked on for shits and giggles. So I feel like putting it right smack dab in the middle of the song kind of like puts a nice break between the vibe of the other songs.
Yeah, definitely. And like honestly, I don't know like if you're planning on expanding on that sound further or if it was just more of like a happy accident. But
Mm-hmm.
like so yeah, but basically, I think I could totally see you, Jack, potentially doing like one EP that's more like songs like Garden and the other songs of the EP, and I could also see you potentially doing even an EP of like all songs that are more in the vein of Opia, if that's something you'd have interest in, because honestly, Opia is really a standout track for me, and I've been listening to it a lot.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like that Opia was included on the EP like that because I feel like it gives us, like you were saying, it gives us more room to like experiment with like a more poppy side if we wanted to. I don't know if I would ever do a whole EP of like just garden sounding songs or an EP of all Opia sounding songs. Like to I like the idea of releasing a body of work that covers a bunch of different genres. So I feel like having Opia on the EP was like kind of a gateway for us to experiment more in the future. And I've already been writing some new material for the next Buried Heart release, which is going to be a full length concept album. And I feel like definitely having that leeway to, experiment with different sounds will be helpful in fleshing out the music and the story elements of the next album.
Oh yeah,
Definitely,
definitely.
that's awesome.
It's definitely much better when an artist has the room and like the fans are used to them experimenting with their sound, so they don't feel constrained to stick to a specific genre.
Yeah. One of the biggest influences for me, a band that I think does that really well, is Coheed and Cambria. They have songs that sound like the Police. Then they have 8 minute long prog epics, and then on the Afterman album they have a song that sounds like a funky, almost like Dashboard by Modest Mouse. And I've always appreciated how that band was able to cover all sorts of different territory without it ever sounding forced. So that's what I'm striving for with my own music.
Yeah, Coheed just is crazily ambitious in like so many ways. Obviously,
Yeah, they were pretty much the band that like got me into like writing guitar. Like the first things I pretty much learned, the first 3 albums I learned how to play all the way through on guitar were the first 3 Coheed and Cambria albums, and that pretty much taught me like different chord shapes that I use in all of my writing, and just like the whole premise of like a concept album I had never heard of before I had heard Good Apollo by Coheed. That album pretty much just like blew the doors off of everything that I thought was possible with the music. And the fact that they had like comics to coincide with their albums. Like when I write my own music, I have like a distinct like visual image that I try to convey with the music as well. Like it's almost like every time I write a song, I'm scoring like a memory in my head, if that makes sense.
definitely.
Definitely. Do you have any like plans for like reaching out to an artist and getting like a video done for any of the songs?
I've been actually, I would love to make like, obviously legit music videos, but I have a friend named Dylan who's been like one of my longest friends from since I lived in New Jersey, who's like he's a film student. He's actually going to Australia for a year for film school, but I've been toying with the idea of like making a short. One thing I would really like to do, I don't know when in reality this would happen, but I would love to make like a short film for Safe Harbor where the music is like the score for the movie, and then have that like project onto a wall or something while the band plays. That would be like a bucket list goal for me. Maybe not just for Safe Harbor, but for any one of my albums, to have like a movie or like a short film to like play along to.
Definitely.
As far as that goes, I mean, that's with how like cheap that technology is nowadays. Like that's not too difficult. I mean, the hardest thing would be getting the actual short film done, because I mean, you can buy like little like phone projectors that'll like connect to your phone, and then you just play the video off of it during your set.
Exactly. One of the things, I'm starting to realize that one of the other reasons I need band members and like people besides just myself is that I have all of these like lofty ideas, but then when it comes down to like me thinking that I can tackle them all by myself, I get like kind of overwhelmed or like realize that they're unrealistic. But I felt like, if I had a team who was on the same wavelength as me, we'd be able to do some really cool, multimedia things with the band besides just the music.
Oh yeah, definitely, and especially having like that extra, like more multiple people contributing both funds and ideas.
Yeah.
Means that it's not all falling on top of you.
Yeah, because I mean, this whole EP, like, I funded the recording, the mixing, the mastering. I'm handling all of the distribution and the merch, and it's taking me like a while. I'm proud that I'm able to do it all, but like for future releases, like having a team, I feel like would expedite the process and hopefully make it something better than what I could do just by myself.
Totally. But yeah, as far as the visual aspect goes, just going back to that for a second, I mean, like I think that's something that's definitely more doable than like at any point like in the past, obviously, with how much technology there is out there. And I think like your idea of a short film is definitely pretty interesting. Like I've seen some artists do short films where it kind of uses like snippets of different songs throughout like the short film. And it's not like the length of like the entire release, but it's kind of like they use portions of each song and they kind of mix it together. I think that's something that's interesting too, just for me personally.
Yeah, I've drafted like a couple ideas. I mean, I have so many ideas for like music and stuff that will probably never see the light of day, but I don't know. I feel like a short film to like play along to a movie or to just like play along to as a band would just be like a really fun and kind of different idea for a show. I don't even know if it would be something to like tour with. It would probably just be like a certain one show, kind of like a one-time thing, but I think it would be a really cool event. Like make it a very special performance.
Definitely.
Speaking of shows and tours, though, You have been talking about on Facebook not having the official physical copies of Safe Harbor printed until tour. So, do you have any plans for tour like coming up that you are allowed to talk about?
Oh,
Or...
I honestly like. There's nothing set in stone yet. I mean, Frank and I are working on trying to get a van, but again, it's been one of those things where because I'm handling all of the funding for the album, like the van has kind of been like the bottom of the rung thing. Like now that the album's funded and it's all mixed and everything, like now merch and touring stuff is like what I'm trying to focus on. Right now, I mean, we're in the process of moving from Chico to Sacramento. So right now we're just kind of focusing on setting up some local Sacramento shows. We honestly, realistically, probably won't tour until I want to say early next year. But even still, like the first couple tours will probably just be like West Coast runs to start.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Speaking
right
of that, though,
okay.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But when are you supposed to be moving out to Sac?
Okay, so our lease ended in Chico on June 30th. Right now, as of the day of recording, I am at my parents' place in New Jersey. We put a holding deposit down for an apartment, and we were supposed to be able to move in August 1st, but a couple days ago, they hit us up saying that there was like an application in before us, and now we couldn't move in until September 1st, and that's kind of messing us up because we have shows booked for August. But we're in the process of right now, like I literally just talked to one of my roommates like an hour before recording this podcast, and there's a place that will let us know by Monday if we can move in August 1st, since like all of us, because we were relying on that place letting us move in August 1st, they pretty much told us that we were going to be able to move in August 1st. Like, you know, we're trying to get our job set up down there and everything, and most of us have, you know, jobs waiting for us. So ideally we'll be there August 1st, if not then September, but definitely in the next 2 months.
All right, excellent.
Awesome.
I was just asking because our friends in Sea of Trees, who we did our last episode on, are
Aldrin's
playing
my
a show out in
homeboy.
Sac. Yeah, we are playing out a show out in Sac, and I was gonna say, you know,
I know, dude. I wanted to go to that show so badly, but yeah, our schedules didn't line up, and I'm super sad. Aldrin's my boy. He's like a huge Kingdom Hearts fan too, and like we bonded over that very quickly. I actually met him at Concerts in the Park a couple weeks ago. That was really cool. Concerts in the Park is like this summer. It happens like a couple weeks in Sacramento every summer, but that was where Eternity Forever played their first show this year, and Secret Band and A Foreign Affair and Lost Things also played as well. It was really cool. That was a really fun show.
Yeah, Aldrin was like sending us all these like pictures and video of it. It seemed really cool.
Yeah. It was like probably the best sounding show I've been to. I think because it was outside, they had like a really professional PA system. Like everything just sounded super crisp and clear, and it wasn't like overwhelmingly loud to where your ears were hurting afterwards, even though I wear earplugs to shows.
Right, that's good.
that's the ideal way to go to shows, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading about, I think there's like the original guitar player from Bring Me the Horizon was like going deaf because he never wore earplugs to shows, and I was like, I gotta make sure that never happens to me. Because if I lose my ears, like literally my life is over. I don't know what else I'm gonna do with my life if it's not music related.
Trystan, do you have any other like follow-up questions?
I don't think so. Jack, you pretty much covered everything we had in the beginning.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What have you guys been listening to lately?
Trystan, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, sure. Not to like brag, but to brag a little bit. I got the advance of a new Manchester Orchestra album, which comes out at the end of the month, and holy shit, it's really fucking good.
They're a band. I need to listen to them more. I was in a band with this dude David, who was like really into Manchester Orchestra, and it was like around the time that I think Simple Math came out, and I remember hearing a couple songs from that and being like, oh, this is pretty cool, but I haven't ever really like sat down to listen to one of their albums. But I feel like I hear everyone talking about this new one and how hyped they are off the singles, and it sounds like it's a very like cinematic album too, so I'm excited to check that out. I feel like that'll be the album that gets me into them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I've been a fan for like a few years, but I wasn't like a hardcore fan. Like they're kind of similar, obviously, to like some bands like Brand New in some respects, but they have their own thing too. But I wasn't as into them as like Brand New, for example, because I just didn't listen as often. But this album, like ever since I've gotten the Advance, has been basically nonstop like repeat for me. Like I've listened to it a lot, and for me, I'd say it's pretty easily actually their best album so to date, and I wasn't really expecting that per se, but it really blew me away. It's basically a concept record, and I'm still figuring out a little bit of a concept. I'll go into that more when I review it, but it's a really just well thought out, like really just epic sounding album, and it's just such an emotionally gripping experience, honestly.
That's cool. I'm like 100% more likely to check out an album if it's a concept album.
Yeah.
Same. I still need to listen to it. I've just kind of been listening to other stuff. I try to use my shifts at work because I work during the morning, overnight shifts, and we all just basically put on our headphones and listen to music. So
yeah,
I try to use that to like catch up on my backlog of music, but at the same time I'm like, oh wait, hey, I want to listen to this album that I listen to all the time because it's really good.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was working at a warehouse right before I moved, and I was doing that too originally. I was pretty much, that's where I would listen to your podcast mostly. But I'd be like, oh yeah, there's all these albums I should check out, but then I would just end up listening to Andres' album like 3 times during the shift.
Yeah, exactly. It was like for like the longest time, it was like every morning it would be Andres' album, Divisi, and To Speak to Listen, just constantly.
Yep. Oh yeah, those 3.
Yeah, pretty much same me too.
Those like my favorite 3 albums from this year so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Going back really quick to Manchester Orchestra, ironically, like just as we were talking about, or before we were talking about it, our friend Jovan was messaging me like, hey, I finally checked out the Manchester Orchestra album. It's so fucking good. And I was like, hey, that's awesome. Let me get back to you. We're recording right now. But
nice.
Basically, like, yeah, like everyone I've like shown songs from that album has like really loved it. And like a lot of them had never really listened to the band before. So that's pretty good.
Damn. Trystan, you're going to have hella edits on this episode.
Yeah, honestly, nothing will ever be as bad as the To Speak to Listen track by track.
Oh God,
there was so much because I had to edit it properly for like the full release. Yeah, and then Andrew is sitting on basically analysis of every single song separately because they were supposed to be getting approved for a Spotify track by track. And so the podcast was that, so I had to like make slight edits, like where like Alex would make like a shitty joke, and I'm like, yeah, nobody needs to hear that on Spotify. Like,
is that on Spotify now? That track by track? I mean, I've listened to that interview, but that's
think
cool.
so. I don't know if
so.
They ever actually got approved for it.
Oh, okay.
But it was just one of those things where like Andrew was like, oh hey, if you can do this, just in case.
Yeah.
Did I make that many shitty jokes during that episode? I hope I didn't.
Because I was trying to take it more seriously. You didn't, but like, it's like where we did our transitional, like, oh hey, you want to talk about the next song now? Like I was like, yeah, we don't need that.
Right. I'll hold that thought. I'm gonna open the door for my friend. So be right back.
Damn. Yeah, I should definitely check out Manchester Orchestra, like, because the people I know who listen to them are, like, hella about them. Like, I've yet to meet, like, a casual Manchester Orchestra fan, so I think that's a sign that they're probably a really good band.
Yeah, I mean, like, even, like, the stuff that I've seen, like, conversations about that have been, like, oh, hey, like, I didn't like this stuff by them, like, even the people who are like, yeah, like, I'm not too hyped on this one because I haven't liked some of their stuff are still like really passionate about like, if they liked it or not.
Yeah, the stuff I've heard from Simple Math, I really liked. I heard Cope was kind of like, I guess, their weakest, quote unquote, weakest album.
Yeah, that's the general.
But yeah, it sounds like this new one is kind of a return to form, or like their best embodiment of work.
What's up?
Oh, we were just talking about Manchester Orchestra.
Oh, sick.
We were talking about how much we hate the album. We both listened to it, and we were just like, yeah, we didn't want to say this in front of Alex.
Yeah.
So, what about you guys? What music have you been checking out?
Honestly, the more I listen to that new Straight from the Path song, the more I really like it. I thought it was
see
super
you and Hemi
black
defending
when I first
it.
heard it. Like that was my first exposure to that band, and I was like, "Is this dude trying to be like Zach De La Rocha?" Like I don't really understand what's going on. But I didn't listen to that song all the way through when I first heard it. I was just kind of like, "Okay, this is like a punk song, anti-Trump." But then someone was like, "Oh, did you hear the breakdown at the end?" And I was like, "Nah, I haven't. Let me go back and listen to it." And the last like 40 seconds of that song is so sick. Like I'm really about that song now, and I'm like about to check out their discography. I said this in a Hemi thread earlier today, but I like this song because they're obviously just very pissed about the current political climate, and they're not trying to like be cagey about it or like disguise their feelings behind like clever metaphors or something. Like their vocalist is just straight up angry, and he's not happy with what's going on. And I feel like a lot of bands who maybe feel similarly are taking like a more modest approach to it, but
Yes.
I appreciate that they're just kind of going all in with their disdain. I think
No,
maybe I just need to
honestly-
listen to more punk.
yeah, one thing for me with Straight from the Path is I actually think the Rage Against the Machine comparison is good in the sense that I actually think there should be more bands that are vocal like Rage in today's climate, because Rage came through at a time where there was like there wasn't really that much political activism in like the hard rock scene, and like all of a sudden they just broke through with like such a unique message and sound that was like so passionate and obviously inspired a lot of people. And I think like if any time is right for like bands like that to come through now, like it's the climate of 2017, because like Rage Against the Machine was in the Bill Clinton administration even. And I mean like
Yeah.
God, I mean like they had plenty of grievances with Bill Clinton which are like perfectly legitimate, but like
Nothing compared to the
yeah,
current administration.
Yeah, like imagine if Rage was still active. Like I can't even imagine. Like if they were that pissed when Clinton was president. Oh God.
Yeah.
See, honestly, as much as I would like to see that political activism come back, I would like Rage has a lot of the stink, I guess, of new metal on it
Yeah.
because of that era that it was that they came out in, and you know the fact that Zach was influenced very heavily by rap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, me personally, I'd prefer more of the political activism of a band like System of a Down.
Yeah. Just, oh man, I miss them. Didn't they say they were going to come out with an album and then they were like, just kidding, it's not happening?
There's
I think we're
still
technically
allegedly something coming this year.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up rewriting some stuff if after like Trump won or something. We'll see what happens.
I can't even begin to tell you how many audio issues we had with this episode. So, unfortunately, part of the conversation got cut out. But anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of Plugged In. Be sure to check out the Buried Hearts EP that drops this Friday, July 23rd on bandcamp.com. Have a good one.